I've been getting a lot of questions lately on my Instagram DMs and YouTube messages on when do I think the A7S III is going to come out? What do I think it's going to have? You know, what sort of new improvements or new features that are going to be added to the A7S III? So this video is going to address all of that. Now, before we get this video started, I just want to clarify that all of everything that I'm saying in this video are just based on my speculations and my opinion only. There's nothing concrete about this camera as of right now. There's no announcement, no actual concrete rumors about it. So please take everything that I say in this video a grain of salt. However, it'd be very interesting to see how much I actually get right when the camera gets announced and how much that I got wrong. Oh, and let me know your own speculation and predictions of the Sony a7S III down in the comments below. Let's get started. All right, first let's address the biggest question. When is this camera going to be released? So announcement and release date are two different things. When do I think it's going to get announced? A lot of months before, I kept saying maybe we'll hear something about it during NAB, which is a big camera video broadcasting convention that takes place in Vegas every April. But seeing as how the A7 III just got announced and will drop around that time frame, I really don't think Sony is going to announce the A7S III there because they don't want that camera, that news, that announcement of the A7S III to overshadow the release of the A7 III. So I have reasons to believe now it will not get announced during NAB. I think likely we'll start hearing something about the A7S III around the time of Photokina, which is another camera convention out in Cologne. Hopefully I said that right. And that convention takes place around September, which would be perfect. They drop that announcement in September and the camera gets released around the end of November, which is, I think, a pretty common thing for Sony to do, release a camera towards the end of November. If not, the earliest we'll probably hear about the camera would be Sony Kondo. So if you're not familiar with Sony Kondo, it's pretty much this big photo video event trip that Sony puts together for their artisans and for their collective members to kind of work together, play with new camera gears, take some amazing pictures, and to promote Sony and their products. Last year, they dropped the Sony A9 right around that time of Sony Kondo, so a lot of the artisans and collectors got to play with it. They even flew out some of the big YouTubers out there, the press YouTubers like Max Durev, Tony and Chelsea Northrup. I don't think Frono's photo was there, but a lot of big name YouTubers were out there playing with the Sony A9. So at the earliest, I'm thinking they would drop the camera. They would drop the announcement around Sony Kondo. But again, don't get your hopes up. Maybe they'll drop new lenses around that time. And if you're interested in attending Sony Kondo, it's actually open to the public this year. So if you want more information about this trip, go check it out. So that's the release date. Let's start talking about the camera, the A7S III. So what I'm thinking is physically it has to be the same as the Sony a7R III, the A9, and the A7 III. Same as in it's going to have the dual SD card slots. It's going to have that bigger battery, which means the camera is going to be a little bigger than the A7S II. It's going to have the joystick. So physically everything is going to be the same. It's going to have a headphone jack, mic jack, HDMI port, USB-C. What else is there? Mic jack, and I don't think it's going to have the sync port for the A7S III. It might just be a blank thing like the A7 III, but physically it's going to be very similar to that of the A9, A7R III, and the A7 III. It's going to have 5-axis stabilization, no surprise there. The monitor will be touchscreen and it's going to be improved as well in terms of the resolution, and you will not have to worry about shooting in 4K and the LCD dimming on you. It won't have that. In fact, you can actually amp up the monitor brightness when you shoot in 4K with the A7S III. That's been the recent trend we've been seeing on the A9, the A7R III, and the A7 III, so likely the A7S III will have it. Now, of course, one of the biggest physical feature that people have been wanting on the Sony A7 cameras is the flip out screen. I honestly think the A7S III is not going to have it. If they didn't put it in the A7R III, the A9, and the A7 III, likely the A7S III will be following that trend, so don't expect a flip out screen. Again, that's something that we might see it on the 6700. Again, nothing confirmed, nothing concrete about that camera either. But if you're interested in hearing my speculations on that, see the previous video up there. You might have to fast forward a little bit for that video, but check it out if you're interested. Moving on is the megapixel count. A lot of people have been messaging me, asking me, do I think the A7S III will have 24 megapixels? Honestly, I doubt it. I'm pretty sure there might be a megapixel bump in the A7S III from 12 to maybe something like a 16, something like a relative small bump, but obviously not as high as 24. I don't think they'll be able to keep that low light sensitivity if they bump it up all the way to 24. So if you're hoping for 24, you might as well just stick with the A7 III. But hopefully the photographers out there who are using the A7S for a low light photography camera will get that nice little bump to 16. Hopefully. Okay, so that's that for megapixel. I think the A7S III will likely have phase detection autofocus. The A7S II didn't have that. It was only contrast detect autofocus. So compared to the other cameras, the A7R II, III, A9, A6500, the autofocus on the A7S II was a tad bit slower compared to the rest, even if you are using native Sony lenses. So I'm thinking they will put phase detection and contrast detection in the A7S III, so we'll see better autofocus performance on that camera, which would be great for Sony shooters who are using native Sony lenses. In terms of how many phase detection autofocus point it will have, I'm going to be hopeful and say 399 like the A7R III, but if it's a little lower, I'm not going to freak out about it, but as long as it has phase detection autofocus in the camera, I'll be happy. Now, obviously, everybody is looking towards the A7S III as a video camera more than a stills camera. So let's begin to talk about some of the video features. I'm pretty sure it's going to have that 4K oversampling like the A9 and the A7 III has. And what that pretty much means is that the A7S III will be able to shoot in 4K, but downsamples it into a 4K composition. So you're getting much more richer details and crispier quality in your video footage as opposed to the A7S II and the A7R II. And a lot of people are wanting this, the 4K 60. I'm thinking the A7S III will have it. It's out to compete with the GH5. So yes, I think 4K 60 is a definite possibility in the A7S III. In terms of slow motion, I think it might get a bump to 180 frames per second in 1080p like the GH5. Hopefully they can do a little bit more, but I think having that slight bump will be good. But if they decide to keep it at 120, I don't think it's the end of the world. As long as it has that 4K 60 for me, I think I'll be okay. Now, a lot of video shooters, a lot of filmmakers, they want that 10-bit 422 internal recording. I think the GH5 is very capable of doing that after a firmware update. So if Sony can do something like that internally for the A7S III, that would be great, but again, I won't be too hopeful about it. It will probably end up being the case where you will need an external monitor. So internally, it'll probably do 8-bit 420, but you will need a monitor for that 10-bit 422. So I'm not holding my breath on it. If they can do that internally, that'd be great. If not, you'll still need an external monitor. Of course, we will see S-Log 2 and 3 making a return. I think they're also going to throw in hybrid log gamma, something that they've been throwing into the A7R III and the A7 III. So I'm pretty sure the A7S III will have hybrid log gamma. And one of my followers, Alex, thank you so much, brought up a really good point, but I don't think they're going to have this. Built-in ND filters. If they can throw in a built-in ND filter for the A7S III, woo! That would be freaking nuts. It'd be freaking insane. If they can just do that, I'd be so happy. Like that I would gladly pay a couple $100 extra for that built-in ND filter. It'll be incredibly helpful for people who shoot a lot of videos, especially in S-Log 2 and S-Log 3. S-Log 2 and S-Log 3, I think the base ISO for that is like 800, something ridiculously high. So if they can do a built-in ND filter for people who shoot a lot of S-Log 2 and 3, that would be fantastic. But another thing that I wouldn't hold my breath for. Now, obviously, the A7S III is touted for its amazing low light capability, its low light performance. So how much improvement are we really going to see in this next camera? Honestly, I don't think we'll see that much compared to the A7S II, maybe 1 or 2 stops better, but nothing too drastic. I mean, again, Sony could surprise us on that, but again, to keep my expectations somewhere in the middle ground, I would say it's probably 1 or 2 stops better over the A7S II. Another thing that people's been wanting in the A7S III is the unlimited video recording. As you know, all the Sony cameras are capped out, well, all the Sony Alpha cameras are capped out at 30-minute recording only. That's because of some tax thing in Europe. If it goes over 30 minutes, it's considered a video camera instead of a stills camera. Not too sure, not too familiar with that kind of stuff, but that's sort of the reason why it's capped at 30 minutes. GH5 doesn't have that issue, but I'm thinking we're still gonna have that 30-minute recording limit. So just brace yourself for that. Lastly, how much is the A7S III going to cost? I'm thinking it's gonna be roughly around the same price as the A7R III, which is about $3,200. It's like that when the R2 and the S2 came out. They both were very similar in pricing. Maybe the S was like $100 cheaper, but that's about it. Now, if they do end up putting a lot of these amazing video features and bump up that price, I honestly think that could be the case. They probably will, but I'm gonna be hopeful and hope that they just keep it around $3,200. So expect to pay up to $3,000 for the A7S III. Let me know in the comments down below, what are some of the deal breaker features that the A7S III must have for you to pick up or to upgrade to? Do you think a lot of what I said in this video could be true, or do you think I'm full of crap? Again, let me know in the comments down below. By the way, I've been doing a lot more lives on Instagram, so if you haven't been following me on Instagram yet, please do so. I am pretty much on Instagram Live every day. I'm there tackling questions, so if you have any questions for me, join me on Instagram, catch me live, and ask me your most desired burning questions. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you guys in my next video.